Welcome to the Just Women Sports Podcast, where we talk to the biggest athletes in the world about the untold stories behind their success. I'm Kelley O'Hara, and my guest today is Michelle Wie West. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Trying to get as much sleep as I can.
Yeah, exactly. You're a new mother now, and you're squeezing this in between, your daughter napping, so we appreciate it. But how's it been going?
Good. I just hope no one looks at my Google searches because it's like the most obscure things that I Google every day. I call my Google Dr. Google, which is like really bad. My husband's like, do not use Dr. Google today. And I'm like, oh my God, what are like this weird, I've like watched so many videos on what color normal poop should be. Like, it's just, my Google search is all over the place.
It's so funny because our first ever episode, we sat down with Alex Morgan, and she also just became a new mother. And she kind of said the same thing, that she just Googles everything, is always questioning things. So I can imagine that it's a lot, but I'm sure you're doing great.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Terrifying, but fun.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to definitely talk about motherhood later in the show. But before we get started, I just wanted to, full disclosure, tell you that I am terrible at golf. Some listeners have probably seen videos of me golfing, and it's quite embarrassing. Like, I'm a really bad golfer. So I'm excited to talk to you because you're a fantastic golfer, and to just hear your whole journey and story. So to start us out, let's go back to the beginning. You're born in Honolulu. Both your parents immigrated from South Korea, and your mom was actually an amateur golf champion in Korea. So was that how you were introduced to golf?
Yeah. So my parents put me in every single sport possible. I also played soccer, awful at it. I'm pretty sure they made up an award to give to me because I was so bad that I didn't fall into any of the normal categories. I truly believe they made up an award just so I would have a soccer trophy.
That's amazing.
But I played every single sport. I played baseball. I was on the swim team. I did ballet, gymnastics, and golf was really something that I chose to do because I really wanted to be with my parents. And I saw my parents play in all these couples tournaments, and, they would always, ship me off to my friend's house, for a fun sleepover. But I always just wanted to hang out with them. I was like, okay, you're riding the golf cart, and this is an opportunity for me to drive the golf cart. So I'm going to do everything I can to learn the sport and be with them. And that's kind of how I got into it.
That's so funny. It's interesting. I wouldn't assume that you played a bunch of different sports, because I feel like golf is a very technical sport, and people who become very good at it specialize in it early on. So I find it fascinating that you played a ton of different sports. So at what age did you actually start golfing?
So since I could remember, all I wanted to be was a professional athlete.
Okay.
I loved being outside. I was a total tomboy. Would play basketball with the boys when I was really little, with the kids at recess. I really wanted to be a professional tennis player. That's all I wanted to do. Watching obviously the Williams sisters, Andre Agassi, and, that whole generation. All I wanted to do was become an athlete. And then I played soccer. Awful. Check that off the list. And it was like every year almost, it was like, I'm going to throw this sport out. Okay, I suck at it. I was, pretty good at baseball. I was actually the only girl on the boys team, made the all-star team. Couldn't catch. So I was really good at hitting things. So like tennis, baseball. Yeah.
Hand-eye coordination was your thing in terms of like actual
exactly
hand.
Yeah. But athleticism, not there. So they put me in outfield. I vividly remember this kid stood up on the base, and he had like a mustache. I'm pretty sure he had a mustache at that point. And I was like, this kid is huge. And he finally hits it to outfield. And I'm there trying to catch this ball. And I try to catch it with two hands, goes in between my hands and hit my face. And I come crying to my parents, like, I don't want to play baseball anymore. So that's done. Obviously ballet and gymnastics, you can all know how that went when I was 6 feet at 13. So tennis is like really like the one that I want to do. It was so much fun. Couldn't run. I mean, my 40 is probably like 30 seconds. So golf was really the only thing that was left. So I was like, this is my only chance to be a professional athlete. So I was like, I'm just going to pour my heart and soul into this.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, good choice.
Thank
you.
It
worked out. So what it's like you ended up playing golf, which you became amazing at, and it was because of default. You couldn't play anything else. That's
Yes.
great. So at what I read that you picked up a golf club at age 4. So you were like on the course with your parents, just around it, immersed in golfing.
Yeah. So actually I was practicing baseball at that time. So we're at the baseball field and my parents like brought out like a little golf club that they cut down, and I was hitting it. And then, well, I mean, you know how parents exaggerate. So
Yeah.
I take this with a grain of salt, and I do not know how true this is, but my parents claim that the first golf ball I ever hit went airborne. As a
That's
4-year-old. So
amazing.
take that with a grain of salt. You know how parents exaggerate things. But I just really enjoyed it. My favorite part about baseball was hitting.
Okay.
And my favorite part about tennis was hitting. So golf really was just that.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
really enjoyed it. I remember really soon after that, I hit it over the field and it like flew into someone's backyard and we all just like ran away. So that's when my parents like, okay, we need to graduate her and put her on a golf course. And I was probably about 7 years old. And then from then I was just really, really serious about it.
Yeah, I mean, you developed at an unprecedented pace. If you first got into it, around 7 years old, do you remember your first competition? Because what does that even look like as a 7-year-old? Are there like kids tournaments that you're
Mm-hmm.
playing in?
Yeah, we have, it's called OJGA and HSJGA, which I'm very heavily involved with right now. The Oahu Junior Golf Association and Hawaii State Junior Golf Association. So that starts around like 7 years old, and I started playing in it. And I think what people don't realize is how much of a physical unit I was when I was a kid. I
That's
mean,
insane.
I was 5'7" and 165, 70 pounds, and I was 10 years old. And I was
No.
playing I was an absolute unit. I mean, this is back in the day where parents thought like chicken McNuggets were real chicken and, like the most healthy thing. I don't know. For me, I was like, this tastes great. I'm gonna eat this every day. And I was just like a unit, and I hit the ball probably like 275 when I was 10 years old. So I started playing in stuff on inner island, on island, and I just started winning everything. Qualified for my first national event when I was 10.
Yeah.
And then I just started like, I guess, winning everything on island, like all the state championships. And then they graduated me to when I was like 11 or 12, I graduated to like the 15 to 18 range and kind of won everything. So when I was like 14, I was like, okay, I guess the next logical step is I'm just going to play in a PGA Tour event.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you said that you just became super hyper focused on it. Was that like from 7 to 10? Were you just on the course every single day trying to improve? And did that come from within? Like you just were obsessed with it?
Yeah, I was obsessed with it. I saw how good I could be, and I hated losing. And my mom had a very competitive side to her too, and I really looked up to her for that. She was in pageants all her life, was in competition. She was a dancer, so she would tell me stories about how many blisters she got on her feet, from training all day long. And I kind of saw that as a badge of honor. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Like you always hear stories of athletes being like, oh, I played until my hands were bloody and all of that. And I was like, that's so cool. Like I should be doing that. And so I kind of took that on. And I remember my parents used to pack lunch, and during the weekends, we would go out and just be on the course all day. I just loved it.
Did you have a coach or was it just your parents working with you?
It was my parents in the beginning, and then I had lessons. I took lessons from my coach, Casey Nakama, when I was about 8 or 9.
Okay.
And then I don't know if that IMG Academy,
Yes.
in Sarasota. They tried to recruit me, but I didn't want to move to Florida, so
That's
I started
way far away from home.
No, too far away from home.
Yeah.
So I started remotely working with the coach there, and I started working with David Ledbetter, who was the head coach at IMG Academy since I was 13. Still work with him, so It's been great.
So you as an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old, 7 to 10-year-old, you were just like a machine, not only a unit physically, but like a machine mentally, and with this, drive internally of becoming the best golfer, which I find fascinating because at 8, I was just, playing, kicking the soccer ball for funsies. And you already alluded to it. So at 10 years old, you basically took the golf world by storm. First, you become the youngest player to ever qualify for the U.S. Women's Amateur. Then at age 11, you become the youngest to qualify for an LPGA event. And that same year, you win both the Hawaii State Women's Stroke Play Championship and the Jenny K. Wilson Women's Individual or Invitational. And then the next year, you win the Hawaii State Open Women's Division by 13 shots. All that was a mouthful. That was a ton. That's your resume at 10 and 11, which is insane. And I want to get into the feelings and emotions and just everything that went into that time. But first, can you explain for me, for my sake, and for the listeners, kind of the progression that is how you move up levels in golf and like how that works? Like you can just enter whatever you want, you have to qualify, those sorts of things. So can you kind of give me that landscape of what amateur and professional golfing looks like?
So the normal route usually is for people to play in AJGA events. So the USGA, the one that I qualified for when I was 10, has about 4 championships every year. So it's the US Junior Girls, US Women Public Links, where they don't have anymore. It's now the 4-ball, which is like a team competition, and then US Women's Amateur, and then you have that on the men's side as well. So as a amateur golfer, those events are the biggest events of the summer. They're all usually in the summertime. And then you can start playing in AJGA events, which are a junior league, starting when you're 13. Okay. And then usually the normal route is to, make your high school team, and then make a college team. Mm-hmm. For me, I completely dynamite.
Popped all of those.
Yeah. Things. But here's my rationale for that was that I'm coming from Hawaii, an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And you have these junior golf tournaments, and then you also have LPGA events, which is the professional league, obviously. And in my mind, I was like, it costs the same amount of money for our family to travel to the mainland to play in these tournaments. I might as well get more bang for my buck and play in these bigger tournaments.
Yeah.
And then I started qualifying for them, started getting sponsor exemptions. And I asked the AJJ when I was 12 years old, like, can I start playing in your league? And they had said no. So I was like, okay, I'm getting invitations to these professional events. I was like, it costs the same amount of money. I'm like, this sounds like an opportunity I cannot miss.
Wait, so why'd they say no?
Because I wasn't 13.
Oh, so they wouldn't let you play in this amateur event because you weren't old enough, but you could go play in LPGA events.
Yeah, because I qualified. Yeah, I qualified for my first LPGA event when I was 12 and started, traveling to the mainland. I guess playing in those.
And the way you qualify for LPGA events is through ranking or certain standings within other events, correct?
So yes. So there's a whole different way. Once you become a member, you qualify through money lists, through rankings, world rankings. But for someone who is not a member, there is a qualifying event the Monday before the tournament. I'm not sure how that's changed. It's been a while since I've done that. But back in the day, anyone could, you can just like sign up for it. And then there's 2 spots that get in.
Oh, interesting.
So for one day, it's like a qualifying event. There's always 2 spots that's available for a Monday qualifier.
Okay. And so did you ever have to do that for something?
Yeah. So my first LPGA event, Takefuji Classic, it was played on the Big Island, and I did the Monday qualifying event and I got in.
That's insane. How old were you?
I was 12.
Oh my gosh. So you squarely are just like, yeah, I'm the best here. I'm 12 years old and I'm going to go play in a professional tournament.
Well, for me, like I said, we're on an island. So these opportunities don't come every day. I mean, once you win everything on the circuit, you're just trying to find the next thing and the next thing. And flying to the mainland is so expensive. It's not cheap, It's, it's not like my parents could really afford just to fly to all these events. So when events comes to Hawaii, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that opportunity and just go for it. I mean,
For
it
sure.
doesn't really cost much.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what were you thinking when you started teeing off against adults as 10-year-old, 11-year-old Michelle?
I mean, I was so nervous. I mean, I was on the range with my idols. You know, there's Meg Mellon and Beth Daniel behind me, you know, Kari Webb, these Hall of Famer golfers that you watch on TV all your life. And all of a sudden they're like right in front of you and you're like in the same field with them. It felt so surreal.
I'm sure. I mean, I can't even wrap my head around that. That is crazy. Like it just is wild to think about. Did you ever wish that you were competing with people closer to your age, or was it fun to be a prodigy with these adults? And to follow up on that question, being young and almost not, I don't want to say naive, but we've talked about this in other episodes where when you're young, you don't know the pressure, you don't know the like failure. Therefore, you probably don't get as nervous as you would when you get older, as you do when you get older. And then there's like this level of expectation where you're 11, you're playing against adults. If you win, awesome. If you lose, no issue, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I was the underdog at all times. But you know, at the same time I was playing these LPG events, I was still playing in junior golf tournaments in Hawaii. It wasn't like a one or the other kind of thing. I mean, obviously I turned pro when I was 16. So I stopped playing in the junior golf tournaments at that time. But yeah, I mean, I look back and I'm like, wow, the level of confidence that I had, I definitely wish I still had today. You know,
Right?
yeah, like if you could just play like how you did when you were 10, 11, 12, like it's insane. It's insane
Yeah,
because you have your whole life ahead of you. But that's the one thing that I've really come to appreciate with all my injuries. I just saw my life because obviously I, you know, escalated my career really quickly. I started playing the biggest fields really young. And I was like, okay, where do I go from here? Like my life is going to skyrocket. It's going to be amazing at all times.
yeah,
And that's just not how life is. You know, you get injured, you get knocked down. But I think I really, truly appreciate that because I don't lead my life with cynicism. I wouldn't say that. There's definitely been phases where I did, but I appreciate the good times a lot more now than when I did when I was younger because I just imagined my whole life to be amazing,
for
you know, and
sure.
that's just not the case. So you have to celebrate the good times. I think that's what I learned.
I love that. And it's so true. It's so true. So at what point did you realize you had the it factor?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I ever thought I had the it factor. I was always this like really awkward kid. Still am very awkward. So I never was like the popular kid in school, like quite the opposite. So I'm not sure if I knew I ever had the it factor, but I was just so confident every time I walk on the golf course. I just knew that I was the best. And I don't know if that's arrogance or confidence or just being pure naive, but I just really enjoyed being on the golf course. That's when I felt comfortable. That's when I felt most like myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you started winning, you know, having so much success at such a young age, do you feel like that made you train harder?
Yeah, for sure. Because I wanted to see how good I could become. And breaking records to me was just like so much fun. It was like, okay, what
What
record
can I
can I
break
break?
next?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And it was definitely, you know, like a drug, you know, it was like that you try to find that next high, you know?
for sure. Makes sense. Um, so age 13 and 14, you basically become a national star. Um, you're a teenager now, you're a hometown legend. And then the next 2 years, you know, you continue to blow up. And in 2003, at age 13, you win the women's amateur public links tournament. You're the youngest player, male or female, to ever win a USGA adult event, which again, insane, another accolade. And then the next year in 2004, age 14, you're given a sponsor's exemption to play in the Sony Open, which was a PGA event, correct?
Yes.
So first of all, can you explain a sponsor exemption?
So a sponsor exemption, I believe it depends on what tournament it is. So obviously a sponsor puts up all the money for the purse for the tournament. So in their mind, they're like, okay, I want to have a say in who gets to play a tournament. So I want to allocate 2 to 4 spots where I want to choose who gets to play. So it's someone that obviously isn't in the rankings that would not have gotten the tournament on their own. And Sony, I guess, wanted me to play.
They wanted 14-year-old Michelle out there. That's insane.
Yeah, they're like, I mean, obviously it made for a good news story. I
Totally.
wasn't really aware of that back then. Like I said, also like I've, achieved everything on the island. There was another tournament that I played in was probably 10 minutes from my house. And I was like, okay, another golf tournament came to Hawaii. I'm going to try to play in it. And, they offered me a spot and I got there and I was like, oh my God, I'm actually doing this. It's crazy.
That's wild. So you didn't feel like because like you said, there was a ton of media hype beforehand and during. So you, as a 14-year-old, you didn't really understand or feel that?
No. And I am really happy that back in the day, Google didn't really exist as much. Instagram, so Facebook, no Snapchat. If
True.
Your parents want to hide news from you, they can very easily do so. And, I don't know how to, like the old AOL and, dial up and all that. It's really hard to actually find like news articles about you,
Yeah.
So I just didn't focus on that at all. For me, my mindset was, okay, I played on the boys team in baseball. I made the all-star team. All my friends are boys. So I was like a super tomboy. So I didn't feel like that was a bizarre thing to do. Later in life, I look back and I'm like, okay, like that was crazy. That was crazy that I did that. Yeah. And at that time I was just like, I was just one of those kids that you tell me no, I'm going to do it. And they're like, oh, you can't play with the boys. I'm like, why not? Like, why can't we do that? I don't understand. Like, is it like it's not a rule, like,
I mean, I have a similar story. I used to play kickball and soccer on the playground in middle school and elementary school with the boys, and I was like, oh, I'm just better than them. But you were a 14-year-old playing in a PGA event, and that's just insanity, and so impressive. So you didn't feel this media hype, which probably obviously for the best, like you said. So there's one thing about this tournament that is kind of random, but I read that you had to have custom long pants made because the PGA Tour requires players to wear trousers or golf pants, and you had only worn shorts. Is that true?
Yeah, I had a crazy long inseam, so thankfully, this, all these apparel companies were giving me clothes now and custom making my pants, because at that time, fashion really came a long way. Golf fashion for women have gone a long way. Back then there really wasn't much option. I don't think there even was a woman's long golf pant, and I would just go to the store and it would look like capris, and obviously that would not work. I would get kicked off. So I was very fortunate that I had a lot of companies willing to make custom pants for me.
That's amazing. So we not to talk about what you're wearing, because that's very, things people do with female athletes, but to talk about your performance. You missed the cut by 1 stroke, but you beat 47 adult men over 36 holes with a score that beat or tied 7 major winners at 14 years old. How do you think that performance change your career's timeline?
It accelerated for sure. I shot 68 the second round, and I actually made a birdie on the last hole. And usually, historically speaking, the number that I shot even par made the cut every year. So that in my mind was my goal. If I shoot even par, I make the cut, and I birdied the last hole and make it. And I come off, I gave a fist pump. I was like so pumped. And I got off the green, and my mom's like,
you didn't make it.
You didn't make it. And I was just like, crushed. I'm like, oh man, are these guys playing harder or what? Like that I'm playing in the field.
Probably.
And I was really sad. I was really sad. I thought I made it. But it gave me so much confidence, you know, and when I was also really shocked at how welcoming all the guys were.
That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, and you know, I played a practice round with my idol, Ernie Els. I mean, he's someone that I looked up to my entire life, and you know, I got the nickname Big Wheezy because his nickname is Big Easy, and you know,
That's an amazing nickname.
yeah, and you know, to take away the big part of it.
Yeah, you're probably sensitive to that back then
Yeah.
at like 14.
But you know, obviously, just having that and being able to have those moments and those memories. That I remember more than the actual golf is just being on the range and just being there, not as a kid watching your idols play, but as a fellow competitor. That is just it's crazy, crazy. And things that I've learned from those experiences, or it took me like, it's still with me.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's like such a surreal experience, and you continued to have those. I'm curious, because of all the media hype, and you might not have realized it because maybe your parents sheltered you from it, but did you start to feel after that event this bit of celebrity, like you are this national star? And because with that comes scrutiny, and people started to wonder, like, are you doing too much? Like, should you be playing against people your own age and learning how to win, that sort of thing? So did you start to feel those sorts of things as you progress through your career?
Oh, for sure. You know, you get to an age where, you know, things affect you as a teenager a lot more than it affects you
Right?
as an adult. Like there's a lot of emotions, you know, it's maximum happiness and just maximum teenage angst.
Yeah.
And the thing that made me really sad was the unfair treatment I felt like my parents received.
Mm.
Because, you know, sports writers would write articles on how my parents forced me to do this for attention and, you know, somehow made them seem like these pageant parents where they,
Yeah.
you know, stereotypically push their kids, and that really wasn't the case, and that just made me really sad. You know, the thing that my parents really enforced was me having a normal childhood. You know, they sheltered me from all the news articles. They didn't show me any of the articles. They didn't want me to have a, you know, a big ego. And you know, the thing that really helped was the fact that I went to school. Wasn't homeschooled. I went to a normal school where the school said, okay, you're only allowed to miss a certain amount of weeks, 2 weeks per year. And that really is not a lot.
No.
And my best friend, who was my maid of honor at my wedding, she still to this day does not know what golf is. And and we were, you know, when I would go back to school, even when I was at Stanford too, none of my friends at college know what golf is. They don't know any of that. So I
Yeah.
almost like led this double life where, you know, I would be this, I guess, persona on the golf course, and I would go back home and no one would know. I would just be a completely normal kid. The only thing that really bothered me was, you know, unfair treatment that I felt like my parents had. And, you know, since having, you know, this is the one thing I really love about social media is the fact that you can put your own stories out there.
For sure.
And I always felt like, you know, going through, you know, talking to reporters, and it's just something always, they already have a story in mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I was a communication major at Stanford, and you know, took journalism classes, and I did the same thing too. I already have a story in mind that I want to post, so I'm going to ask these questions to try and get that a story that I have in mind. And that really made me understand reporters and have a better understanding of them. I definitely had a lot of hatred towards reporters when I was younger because I did not quite understand that. And I was like, why are they just like printing out lies, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I think being able to share your own story, your own way, I really do enjoy doing that.
Yeah, it's so important. And like you said, I think that social media allows you to do that. I'm the same way. And hopefully this feels like a chat and not
Yeah,
we're like, you're part of the media now. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm literally just having a conversation with fellow athletes and having them tell their stories.
exactly.
And yeah, I can't imagine going through that as a teenager. Would not have handled it well. So the fact that you were able to do it in a way that, you know, was mature and gracious is impressive. And to have people like attack people that you love, it just that would be hard. So hat off to you about that. So going forward or moving forward, you turned professional right before, or a week before your 16th birthday. What went into that decision? Because that's such a huge decision to make.
I just thought a lot of things I did when I was younger. I was like, oh, that'd be really cool. Like, it really wasn't
why
much
not?
like, yeah, why don't I just like for my 16th birthday, was that, like that Sweet 16 show on MTV was like this big thing. And I was like, okay,
You're like, mine is going to be turning professional in golf.
yeah, like, how like you're supposed to do something big for your 16th birthday. And I was like, I'm going to turn professional.
That's hilarious. So was
Yeah.
that, so it was basically, you had just been progressing so much and you were like, why wouldn't I turn professional at this point?
Yeah, and I obviously would get top 10 at, LPGA tournaments, and I would see the paychecks that I would not be receiving. And I'm
That's
like,
right.
wait a second there. Why can't I get that money?
Yeah, no kidding.
And I mean, for me, like I knew my parents never made me choose between education and sport. It was always education plus you can do something if you can fit it in. So for me, when I made that decision, I didn't feel like I was giving up my school life. I didn't feel like I was like giving up my education. It felt like something I can do on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was like one of those things where your parents like, oh, if you can keep up with your homework, you can do A, B, and C. And I was like,
You
okay,
can be a
if
professional
I keep it
golfer.
with if I can keep it with my homework, I could be a professional golfer, and then I can cash all those paychecks I've been making.
No
So that's
kidding.
really as deep as I was thinking.
That's so interesting. Do you feel like when you made that decision, did that decision weigh on you? Like, was it, or you just were like, yeah, this seems natural, I'm going to do it? Or was it like months of thinking, oh, I want to do this?
I honestly don't remember. I don't think it was months of thinking.
It was just like, no, let's
Knowing
do it.
myself. Yeah. I kind of just have this idea in my mind. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm like, my motto, I guess, is like, what's the worst thing that can happen?
That's awesome. That's a great motto.
Yeah, it's taken me on like, turn here and there. But, it's just, what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, I knew I wanted to go to Stanford. That was not something I was going to give up. And, not having experience of playing on a high school team, I guess, I didn't really have that experience, or I didn't know what I was missing. So I was like, okay, I can turn pro and I have good enough grades. So hopefully, and maybe a cool enough story that I can get into Stanford. So that was my next main goal.
Do you feel like your life changed once you made that decision? Or do you feel like
Yes
it
and
stayed
no.
similarly?
Very similar.
Okay.
I don't even know. I don't think I even bought anything. My parents put all my money in a trust
That's
that I
amazing.
couldn't touch. And we stayed in our same apartment. We didn't, move or do anything extravagant. I wasn't all of a sudden flying in private jets. I did have the opportunity to a couple of times because my sponsors were so amazing.
Yeah.
But it's not like I was still the unpopular kid in high school. I still have the same friends. So and nothing really changed. It's just the fact that I could play in LPGA tournaments. So you have to be 18 to join the tour, and you can petition to join earlier, but I chose not to. I just didn't want to join the tour full time because that meant that I couldn't go to school. So I just waited.
That makes sense. So I want to get into a couple injury type things, early struggles that, were obstacles on your journey. And right as you were turning professional, 15, 16, you had some early top 5 finishes, but then you ended up injuring your wrist. And these were really like the first big road bumps in your career during, what would otherwise be considered an exponential rise, which we've already talked about and is insane. How did you handle these, an injury and this road bump?
Injuries definitely were the toughest part of my career. It was the moments that really brought me down and brought me to a dark place. I actually fractured my wrist at Stanford at my visit.
Doing what?
Yeah. Well, I was, they put me up with some of the golf girls and they're like, we're going to go do a workout. And I'm like, okay, I'll just do my workout, I guess, with you guys. And they were on the track and I had this track workout that I do. And remember I told you I'm not an athlete. My trainer at the time told me to do like backward sprints.
Oh no.
I don't know why. Yeah, exactly.
Oh no.
Fell and fell backwards on my left wrist, fractured it in 3 places. And, I honestly didn't know much about orthopedic specialists. I mean, that's all I know now. Or, specialist surgeons, specialist doctors. Back in the day, I just went to my pediatrician and I was like, my wrist hurts. And they just like put me in a cast. And, my doctor did the best they could, but they're obviously not orthopedic specialists. And my wrist didn't set properly.
Oh my
and they took my
gosh.
cast off a little bit too early, hit some golf balls, fractured it some more. So, and at that point, I did not understand what an injury was. I mean, obviously I broken my arm when I was a kid. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah.
But going through this was such a different experience now. You have to, do the right things. You have to rehab. I did not know any of those. So, and at the same time, I was like, okay, an injury can hurt my body, but it's not going to break my mind kind of thing. I had this like really stubborn mentality where I'm like, pain is mental, pain is mental, pain is not mental, pain is really physical.
Yeah.
And I went on this route where, I, just took painkillers, not in an unhealthy way, but just enough to, keep playing at a high level, could not. And that's when I just really got, down on myself. I just felt like it was one moment where my life had completely shattered. I just, I imagined my life, like I said before, like it just to be amazing all the time. And I just can trace it back to this one moment where I felt like my life had completely fallen apart. And that was, really difficult to come back from. But, going from that and, obviously having a lot of injuries in my career, that's definitely been the toughest part because I felt like a lot of it was, outside of my hands, like little freak accidents here and there.
Yeah.
So, it's something that I wish I didn't have to experience or anyone else have to experience, but I'm also glad that I have experienced it because now I have experience of going through it and I know what to do and I can help my friends who are going through the same, I guess, experience of when they go through an injury.
Yeah. Makes sense. I can't believe that you just went to your pediatrician for a broken wrist as a professional golfer. That's so crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know any better though. Like, my parents didn't know any better. Like
Yeah.
I don't think like back in the day there was that. I mean, when you're a parent to a kid, I think that if your parents aren't athletes and have gone through that, I don't think you know what the first thing to do is.
No, I know. It's true. And I'm just thinking because you weren't necessarily on a team and you didn't have maybe like an ATC or something that said, oh, you
Exactly.
need to go see an orthopedic surgeon. They need to set this properly. This is very important. Like your wrists are essentially the most used. I mean, I'm not a golfer, so I don't know, but very integral to
Yeah.
golfing.
It's like hurting your foot, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Yes. It's
yeah.
like my ankles. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
I've only seen orthopedic surgeons for. Oh my gosh. So would you say that like was your first time that you were feeling anxiety, like adult anxiety, like this pressure of, oh my gosh, this is my career and now I can't do it the way that I want to?
Oh yeah, I felt like I couldn't do it at all. Like I actually got like really nervous. I had the yips after that. I would, oh yeah.
I love that term.
It's real. I've had it 3 times in my career. And just I would get to a shot and be like terrified. And that's, kind of why I stepped away from the game this past time, like about 1.5 years ago. It's just, I was in so much pain that I just like was terrified. Like this little white golf ball, it was so terrifying to me that, I just, it was scary.
Do you feel like you, after the first bout of like your wrist injury, do you feel like you were able to get to a good place mentally again? Like you worked through it and you're like, okay, this is how I can, I get back to where I want to be.
For sure. Oh yeah. And, that's what I'm most proud of myself throughout my career is, not my beginning, but how I would always come back after feeling like I'm in the lows of lows. And I think that's what all athletes can, have that same experience where you know, there are times where things that we do every day seem so easy and every day doesn't. And there's so many times I wanted to quit. There's so many times where, you know, I just didn't want to play anymore, but I, you know, found the passion for it again. And I think it was so weird. I think through my injuries and through going, when golf was so easy, it almost got to the point where I lost my passion because I didn't have to work at it. I took everything for granted. And I think when everything was taken away from me, that's when I truly, truly found the passion for the sport, is because I almost had to relearn everything you know, from the ground up. And that was so exciting to me, was to build. And I could finally understand, like, when golfers first get into it, they get so addicted to it because it's so hard. And I know it sounds like crazy to say, but for me, finally, golf was like really, really hard. And it was almost addicting to try to find that back.
Totally. Pursue excellence, because you're never going to be perfect, but you can go after it. And it's, I had that moment today at the field when I was like just out there training on my own, just being able to always trying to be as good as you can possibly be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is, I love that. That's awesome to hear. So go to Stanford, because we have the Stanford connection. You've talked about this already, that education was super important to you. Do you feel like, so you always wanted to go to college, regardless of if you were a professional or were playing golf? And were you ever concerned that the academic load would distract from your golf game? Because it's very different being a college athlete, because they're, you know, they're one and the same, or not one and the same, but they work together. You have your academics, you play for your college or compete for your college, but you're going to school and attending class, but then you have to go and be a professional. So what was that like?
I was a little bit nervous, but not nervous, because I felt like the high school that I went to was very academically challenging. So I've always had the experience of doing homework in the car when my mom's driving, or, you know, on the road. So I felt pretty confident. I think my parents knew that going to college for me was a good way for me to grow up. And, you know, you learn so many things in college that you can't learn anywhere else. And I'm looking back on it, that was probably the smartest decisions that, you know, we've ever made, was for me to go to Stanford. And, you know, going to Stanford was one of my biggest dreams in life. My grandfather was a visiting professor there. Both my aunt and uncle, you know, went there. My dad applied, didn't get in. So it was always that thing that I was like, I mean, it was at UPenn. It's also a really, really good school. But it was always my one thing. I'm like, I'm going to get into Stanford and show you that, like, I got it.
Poor dad.
I know. I feel bad for him. Rubbing in his face all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was like the one school where I thought that even if it took me away from golf a little bit, it was worth it.
Totally.
I was going to only apply to one school. If my college counselor was like, that's really not smart to do so. Especially when you're not joining a team and, you know, you already know that's a guaranteed. So I ended up, you know, applying to a couple different schools and got the letter, didn't even open them. So like I felt like the only school that was worth potentially distracting myself from playing golf was Stanford.
I love how you put that like it was worth it. Even if it was going to be a little bit of a distraction, you still wanted to go. And
For sure.
I respect that. That's really cool. So you obviously loved Stanford.
Oh my God. It was the best 5 years of my life.
Right?
It was insane. It's insane.
It's the best place on earth. I'm telling you.
It really is.
Yeah. So 2009, 2010, this is while you're at Stanford, you're a student. You won your first professional tournament, the Lorena Ochoa?
Ochoa. Yeah.
Ochoa Invitational. In 2010, you had another good season and picked up your second win. What were those wins like for you? What did that do for your mentality?
Oh, that was huge. You know, like going back to the injury in 2007 when I got it, and, you know, 2 years I, you know, played really bad. 2009, I actually made my first Solheim team, which is, you know, USA versus Europe is a big team event, which I'm very passionate about. And, you know, being on that winning team and then also winning that same year, it just really felt like I validated my place on tour. You know, always being that young kid on tour, always being, you know, the junior who got sponsor exemptions, and just like really That's the year I got my card. I actually went to qualifying school. It was a crazy story.
Wait, what's qualifying school?
So, you know how I told you on Monday qualifiers where there's like 2 people get
Yes.
in? There's an entire qualifying week where top 20 get their LPGA Tour card, which is
Got
their
it.
status. And back in the day, you can also get your status if you won a tournament or if you get a certain ranking.
Okay.
And actually, 2008 was probably one of my worst years after my getting back from my wrist injury. I was on my way to win my first tournament, and I actually didn't sign my scorecard, which in golf, if you don't sign your scorecard, you get automatically disqualified.
Oh my God, that's stressful.
Yeah. So I finally played well. I'm like, oh my God, if I win this event, I don't have to go to qualifying school, because qualifying school is like the most stressful week of your life. It determines your future.
Is qualifying school you're playing golf and how you, and like you're guaranteed to qualify, or you have to rank a certain area number?
So it's like it's a 5-round qualifying series where you have to make top 20.
Okay.
So top 10, you get your card. Top 10 to 20 is conditional depending on who withdraws. It's really complicated. Yes. But basically you have to like get top 20 out of, there's 2 stages, right? Out of like 300, 400 people.
So it's stressful.
It's stressful. It all depends on how you play that week. It's not like based on the whole year. Mm-hmm. It's just how you sometimes you have it on, sometimes you don't have it on. It's just like super stressful. And I almost won a golf tournament and could skip qualifying school. I just didn't sign my card. And I was so excited to finally be playing well that I didn't sign my card. So
that is wild.
Yeah. So going through that, finally, like I just felt like really validated. I'm official, LPGA member, mm-hmm. And having that, being at school and then coming back and, celebrating, that was, a lot of fun.
For sure. I feel like that must've been like such a great feeling to have your first professional win. That's awesome. And to not go from a high to a low, but 2011 through 2014, like I said, we talked, your wrist was mm-hmm. happened earlier, and then you kind of have this second slump, if you want to call it that. But it was, a lot of people started to focus on your putting game. And mm-hmm. To your credit, you persevered again, and you did what you had to do to adjust your game and to be a better putter. Can you talk about, so I've watched some of the videos. Can you talk to us about the evolution of this iconic tabletop putting style, and like how you got to that place, and just working through being like, I've got to figure this out. How do I do this?
Sports is, obviously there's a big physical component, but it's a huge mental component as well too. And
especially golf. You talking about the white ball being, you're like scared of this white ball and your enemy. I'm obviously not a professional golfer, but I do not understand how people consistently hit this tiny little ball. It is insane to me. So sorry, continue.
Yeah. I mean, like soccer is like, a lot of sports are reactive, you don't even have time to think. Whereas golf, you have like all the time in the world to think.
So true.
So when you do go through a slump, it like really magnifies it. You just all of a sudden you're like really in your head about things and really couldn't putt, just felt really uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden at the last tournament of 2013, I remember, I was playing really bad. I was putting really bad. And then all of a sudden in the middle of the round, I was like, in my mind, I was paired with a really short player, and that short player was making all the putts. And I was like, you know what? I'm using my Stanford brain here, and I think the scientific reason why she is putting better than me is because her eyes are closer to the golf ball, and therefore, ipso facto, this white ball is looking bigger to her, and the hole is looking bigger to her because she is that much closer to the ball.
This is amazing. Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, okay, if I get closer to the ball and make myself the same height as her, then ipso facto, I will start putting better.
This is incredible. That's such a good story.
So I started doing that, and I didn't realize what I was actually doing until some people started talking about it, and I was like, okay, so what? Like, yeah, I'm like a little bit more bent over, and then started watching like pictures of me, and I started laughing. I'm like, oh my God, I'm literally 90 degrees, but I didn't care. I finally, from that moment on, I started feeling really comfortable, and that was something that I was searching for, and I didn't know that was the answer that I had found, but it was something that helped me. I won twice that following year. And
Yeah, which I
felt
want to
really
ask you about.
comfortable.
Yeah, so in 2014, like you said, you figured out, you were like, make the ball look bigger than it is from as tall as you regularly are. Because you figured something out, because in 2014 you picked up your third win. And even more importantly, you won the US Women's Open, and it was your first major, which is something you obviously were building towards for years. And it came down to the final 3 holes. And I want to talk about when you lost the ball, when you guys couldn't find the ball. I watched a video on this, and you said that you weren't stressed about finding the ball. So on the 17th hole, you lost the ball, right? Is that what it was?
16.
16th hole. Okay.
Yeah, I was just honestly like, you know when something feels so surreal to you and you're just like kind of in a daze and like, oh, find the ball. I was in such a zen mode that week, and that's probably why I won. Because naturally I do have a lot of anxiety, and for some reason I was like, oh yeah, we'll find the golf ball, it'll be there. And thankfully my caddy found it with probably 10 seconds to go, because there's a 5-minute limit
I know.
on finding a golf ball. But yeah, I was just in a really zen mode, and I guess, when it's your week, you have this really calming sense, I guess.
For sure. Yeah. Cause like you said, I mean, I feel like golf it's so mental. And if you're able to be in just the Zen zone, must be, that is the best place in any sport, really.
Yeah.
So you see the final putt go in on the 18th hole. What did that mean to you?
Oh, it was everything. I just had this huge sense of relief. It was just pure happiness. It was something that I've wanted to achieve my whole entire life, and it all come together. It was amazing. I felt so accomplished. It was the best moment of my life, besides obviously getting married and having a kid. I got to put that out there before my husband hears this and he's gives me crap the rest of the day.
Totally. Oh my gosh. How was the celebration afterwards?
Oh, it was amazing. It's so the US Open trophy, it's this really big jug.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to figure out how many beers would fit in it. Which is all sorts of I mean, I don't remember.
Clearly. Oh man. That's awesome. I love that. So you win your first major, and so 2014 till now, you've alluded to this already in the podcast, that you've had to deal with a lot of injuries, throughout a couple times in your life, a couple of them coming in the last few seasons. So in a lot of ways, your story started out as a prodigy tale, and this, just insane kid golfing with adults. And now it's turned into one of perseverance, and which I love, and I think is so important for people to hear you talk about that. And in 2019, you even said in an interview that you weren't sure how much you had left to give. Mm-hmm. What has kept you going through all of these different setbacks?
I think for me, finding happiness in my life was one of the most driving factors of all my decisions. So turning pro, playing in men's events, going to college, those were all things that I wanted to do, and I wanted to live my life knowing that I've done that. And, I think stepping away from the game, I knew at that time that I had so desperately wanted to play golf, but my body was telling me, just rest, just stop. And I'm just really glad for that as well too. I feel like everything happens for a reason, and I'm convinced that my injury happened at that time, so then I could have time to plan my wedding and just have a kid, have a baby. And I knew that doing both of those things were potentially going to distract me from golf the same way that potentially going to college would. But happiness to me is the most driving factor of all my decisions, and I knew that those are things I wanted to do. I'll figure it out as I go. And then having my baby, and I was thinking, okay, I was always that person that was like, I'm gonna have a kid and then I'm gonna stop playing. Was always thought that I was going to be that. I actually had this really long talk with Carrie Walsh Jennings. We did a TV show together, and, she has 3 kids, play at the highest level still.
Yep.
And it was just so amazing. And I was like, okay, that sounds, doable. I can do that. And then the moment I found out that my baby was a girl, that really changed my perspective on the world and, how I want to leave the world for her and, women's sports and, whatever she wants to do. And I wanted to lead by example. And that's kind of the driving force now, to get back, because honestly, after my last injury, it really didn't seem possible. And, stepping a lot of time away from it, and the fact that my husband is playing, we play together, it's definitely brought that childhood joy back, which is a lot of fun. And, having that inspiration, I think it drives you in a very different way.
I love all of that. And that just like warms my heart so much, because that's such a good perspective and outlook to have on life. Like you've been going and going and going since you were 10. And the fact that you're able to be like, joy and happiness is the most important thing. And being able to evaluate that and find that in your life and figure out what that means is incredible. So I thank you for sharing that, because I think that's like so important for people to hear. So a little bit on your pregnancy. You kind of already talked about this, but being a new mother, did that change your understanding of your own body and what it's capable of?
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I didn't really have much confidence in my body. My body, just I felt like had failed me so many times. I had this just negative relationship with my body, just because I felt like at every time I felt like I was turning a corner, something would happen. And injured, can't play again, injured, can't play again. So I just got to the point where I expected it. I expected the worst from my body. And, when my husband and I were talking about having a family, it was always this internal fear that I wasn't going to be able to conceive. I wasn't going to be able to, have a healthy pregnancy. And, I think going through the process, conceiving fortunately pretty easily, and, not having many bumps in the road, healthy as can be. It definitely taught me to be a lot more forgiving with my body. Obviously going through pregnancy, your body image completely changes, and it's something that I'm still learning to do every day. I don't recognize myself in the mirror, and it's something, the relationship with your body completely changes. But I have so much more respect for my body now, knowing that I grew a human completely from scratch, and it's just like mind blowing to me still to this day. So I definitely have a better relationship with my body, and I have a lot more confidence in it, I guess.
That's awesome. So your husband works for the Warriors, and you obviously are a professional golfer, and now a mother. But question, which do you think your daughter McKenna will pick up first, a basketball or a golf club?
I don't know. I mean, I think if it was up to my husband, she would pick up a golf club first.
Really?
Yeah, my husband's like so obsessed with golf.
That's amazing.
Oh yeah. So Callaway is one of my sponsors. And they made a little wedge for her, and I believe like as soon as it came in, my husband put it in the bassinet with her, and it's like, this is what you're gonna play.
That's so cute.
But in Korean culture, actually, when the 1 year birthday, you actually like lay out all these things, like a pencil for an educator, or like a gavel for a judge, or balls for sports, whatever. So we're gonna lay out everything and see what she literally picks up, I guess.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to find out. That's so fun. I like that tradition.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a couple repeat questions. We're almost done, so thank you for the time. So this show is sponsored, or season 2 is sponsored by Heineken, and as part of their 1 in a Billion initiative and campaign, I wanted to ask you, who has been the 1 in a billion person in your life or career who's had the biggest impact on you and your journey?
I think my mom, for sure. She was always the person that motivated me, inspired me. and always reminded me of what I wanted to accomplish. There were so many times, like we had mentioned before, where, I'd wanted to quit. I was injured, and she was always that person that would remind me why I started the game in the first place. And I don't think if it was for her, I would have quit a long time ago. So I'm really grateful for my parents for pushing me and, just reminding me that this is what I want to do, and always kind of setting me back on the path.
That's awesome. Go mom. Love it. All right. Second repeat question is, they say work hard, get lucky. How much of your success is predicated on luck? And when was a time you got super lucky?
I mean, the thing that pops in mind is the ball in 16. I mean, the fact that we found the ball. I mean, if we didn't find the ball, it would be a completely different story. Maybe I would have won, maybe I'm not. But that definitely has a lot of luck, things to do with luck. Finding the golf ball with a couple seconds to go.
Yeah, like a golf ball hidden in
Yeah.
the weeds. Oh man, that's so good. That's so true. So if you had to put a number to it in terms of your career, hard work, luck, what do you think the percentages would be?
I think the harder you work, the luckier you get, because you put yourself in situations where luck matters. I don't know. I mean, I would say 70 hard work, 30% luck.
Love it.
Yes.
That's good. We've gotten an array of different, across the spectrum in terms of numbers. We did one the other day and it was 0 luck and 100% hard work. So it just depends on the athlete. So you've accomplished so much already. Where do you want to go next, and how do you keep pushing?
I think within the sport, I would love to be able to come back, play healthy, and have my daughter be there when I win a tournament, and have her at the trophy celebration, be there when waiting outside the green. So that's within the sports, and I really want to do. But just overall, just try to be the best mom I can be. Definitely have a lot of dreams and things I want to accomplish outside of the sport. I've always been that person that has a lot of things on her plate, but just be a good wife, be a good mom, just keep being happy. That's the most important thing to me.
That's amazing. And like I said, I love that happiness is such a key part of your life. And I appreciate all the time that you've given us today and squeezing us in while your daughter is napping. So thank you for being on here and for just sharing your journey with us. And I'm so excited to watch you come back, because I do believe that you're going to, and you're going to get the win, and your daughter wins, and your daughter is going to be there to see that and to celebrate with you. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.